A 10-year-old boy was found dead in a bin at his mum's house. In Rock Island, Illinois, there has recently been a sickening discovery. A 10-year-old boy called Zion was found deceased in a bin in a garage. An autopsy has taken place and his death is being treated as suspicious. Shockingly, it's believed that he was deceased for around 7 months. A neighbour spoke to reporters and said that she was wondering why it took police so long to find the missing boy and how they found him in the bin. The child's mother, 37-year-old Sushi Staples, has been arrested. It's believed that an anonymous source contacted the police about weird things that Sushi was saying in relation to her son. On January the 3rd, Sushi allegedly said to her neighbour that Christmas would never be the same again. On July the 25th, the neighbour made another anonymous call, and police decided to do a welfare check. The investigation into Zion's death continues.
I killed my 3 children by strangling them, and my husband forgave me. My name is Lindsay Clancy, and on January 24th, 2023, I committed the unforgivable. My husband, Patrick Clancy, had gone out to get food when I became completely consumed with rage. I fell into a fit of dementia, and I had been diagnosed with postpartum depression in the preceding months and even had medication to take for anxiety. But that day, it seems it was not effective enough. I went to my 3 children, aged 8 months, 3 and 5 years, and strangled all 3 of them. Immediately after, I went up to the 2nd floor of my house and jumped out the window in an attempt to commit suicide. My husband arrived shortly after, discovering what I had done. I was transported to the hospital and will remain paralyzed for life. Despite what I did that day, my husband, Patrick Clancy, has agreed to forgive me, publicly explaining that he is still in love with me and has set up a fundraiser for our children, which has raised more than $1 million in total. Does my depression suffice for me to be forgiven?
This Bumble Day ended with a man being killed. 17-year-old Emma Kuzak met 36-year-old Charlie on Bumble dating app. Charlie is believed to be from Glendale, California, but he was allegedly visiting Las Vegas on June the 28th. Contacting Emma via Bumble, he asked if she wanted to hang out that evening. The pair went to get alcohol and then they went back to Charlie's hotel room at the Luxor Hotel. It's believed that during the evening, Charlie showed Emma his handgun. Emma claimed that she grabbed it and shot it when Charlie was about to attack her. She said that they'd gotten into an argument. However, Emma did then change her story and said that she shot Charlie because he was kicking her out of his hotel room and she planned to rob him. Emma said that Charlie went to grab the weapon and so did she. Emma then rang police to report that she'd shot somebody in the hotel room. She states that she didn't intend to and she simply acted on impulse. She turned herself into police and she was booked at the Clark County Detention Center on her birthday when she turned 18. She's currently being held on a murder charge.
These are the weirdest facts you will ever hear, part 1. Abraham Lincoln once pardoned a man who was accused of trying to have sex with a horse. And the reason President Lincoln pardoned him was because the man was drunk. Next up, ancient pharaohs used to masturbate and ejaculate into the Nile River to make sure the river will continue flowing. This is absolutely crazy, and just imagine being a bystander watching this. Lyndon B. Johnson, who was the 36th president of the United States, often whipped out his penis, which he nicknamed Jumbo. And he also peed himself a lot and in public. Next, until the late 1800s, some male singers would be castrated to preserve their high-pitched voice, which is just insane. Adolf Hitler had a micro you-know-what. And not only that, he did not pee out of the tip. He had a condition where he peed from the underside of his you-know-what. This definitely made him a super insecure man. Finally, noble women in ancient Rome would often pay to sleep with gladiators. And some gladiators were so popular that they were able to buy their freedom with the money they made from doing it.
I poisoned my 2 children with cyanide-laced candy to cash in on their life insurance. My name is Ronald O'Brien, a 30-year-old American man, married and father of 2. I was in debt over $100,000 and felt desperate. To salvage my financial situation, I decided to do something terrible. In the weeks leading up to Halloween, I took out a high-value life insurance policy for my 2 children, Timothy and Elizabeth, so that if they were to die suddenly, I would receive a large sum of money from the insurance. On Halloween night in 1974, I poisoned my own children with cyanide-laced candy. a highly potent poison. I even poisoned other children in the neighborhood to try to conceal my act. Timothy took one of the candies and quickly fell seriously ill. He had to be rushed to the hospital where he tragically passed away. Fortunately, Elizabeth and the other children heard about the incident and did not consume the tainted candy. I was quickly identified as a suspect by the police and eventually sentenced to death.
This beauty queen is accused of killing her husband over an apparent affair. In 2020, Lindsay Shiver posted one of her wedding photos online. She had married football player Robert Shiver and called theirs a perfect marriage. However, it transpires that this couldn't be further from the truth. Lindsay is a 36-year-old former Miss Houston County, and Robert once signed for the NFL's Atlanta Falcons. The pair have 3 children together and a stunning Bahamas home, as well as a house in Thomasville, Georgia. Now, according to court documents, Robert filed for divorce on the 5th of April after stating that Lindsay was having an affair. On the 28th of July, Lindsay was accused of planning to have her ex killed. According to news outlets, police were actually looking for a suspect for an unrelated break-in at Grabber's Bed Bar and Grill. Police came across WhatsApp messages on Lindsay's phone relating to the alleged murder plot. Lindsay has been arrested along with a 28-year-old male who is believed to be her boyfriend. A man called Farron Newbold was also arrested as the apparent hitman.
These are the weirdest things kids ever brought to school, part 1. Up first, during World War II, schools would have kids bring in all kind of trash like scrap metal, rubber, paper, and virtually anything they could get their hands on. They did this so these materials can be recycled into weapons and machinery. So these young children would literally bring in metal to help win World War II for America. Next up, elementary school students were at recess one day when one of the kids decided to take a hornet's nest into the school. This resulted in teachers and students getting stung and just sending the whole entire school into a panic. But the real question is, why in the world would this young kid bring a whole hornet's nest into the school? Up first, this teacher told her class to bring the oldest thing they could find in the school the next day. And you won't believe what this one kid brought. Believe it or not, this boy brought his old neighbor to school that day because it was the oldest thing that he could find. Next up, this middle schooler brought a voodoo doll to school one day, and he then said he's going to use it against the principal. The principal then found out about this and the young boy was expelled from school, which makes sense if you bring a voodoo doll to school and say you're going to use it on the principal. Finally, this middle school girl had a 2-month-old sister, and everybody in her class wanted to see it. So one day before school, she put it in her backpack and brought it to school to show everybody. Long story short, her mom was not happy about this nor the school, and she was then suspended for 5 days. This is real footage of Robert Oppenheimer testing the first ever atomic bomb.
They had to commit themselves and their experiments to the test. July 13th, they began the final assembly. The bomb was hooked up to a crane which would lift it to the tower. July 14th, finally the ride to the top. Cables, detonators, informer, initiator hookup. July 15th, final dry runs. Tension. Everything ready. July 16th, a rainstorm with spectacular lightning delayed the test from 2 a.m. to 5:29 a.m., just before dawn. Dignitaries from the scientific world watched from the hills. Participants and watchers were instructed to lie on the ground, facing away from the tower. Only after the initial flash could they look at the developing fireball through welder's goggles. A flare in the sky signaled the final countdown. 8, 7, 6, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1, now. The flash was later calculated to be brighter than 1,000 suns. Miles away, a young girl, blind from birth, saw the flash. Men at the site felt the heat of a desert sun. Then came the shockwave. 2 GIs at the command.
31 decomposing bodies were found inside of this funeral home in Indiana. So welcome to the Langford Funeral Home and Family Center. This funeral home was located in Jeffersonville, Indiana, and for years people trusted them with the funeral process, the burial of their loved ones and pets. But in 2022, local authorities received a tip about the building. Neighbors were reporting a very foul smell emanating from the funeral home. And disturbingly, when officers entered the building, they discovered 31 bodies in varying states of decay strewn throughout the building. Obviously, a lot of these bodies were not being refrigerated, they were just being left out to rot. And in addition, they found the cremated remains of 16 people. That brings the total up to 47 individuals' remains found out in the open inside of this building. It was also reported that some of those bodies had been sitting in the building since March, and it was only investigated in July, which means I can't imagine what they looked like, what they smelled like. I mean, this is just so shocking. Eventually, Randy Langford, the mortician owner of the business, pled guilty to theft. These theft charges stemmed from his failure to actually finish out the funeral process and provide his clients with the services that they had paid for, like burial and cremation. But this story only gets more disturbing. So when authorities actually went through the building and checked on everything, they found that 3 of the building's 4 air conditioning units did not work. Which means that this guy, Randy, the one who ran the place, was sitting there with the smell of all of those bodies almost constantly while he was working. Another family actually filed a civil complaint against Randy too and said that he had sent them a box reportedly containing their daughter's remains. But when authorities searched through the complex, they actually found their daughter's rotting corpse amongst all of the bodies. I mean, I feel like this guy should definitely have gone to prison for a much longer time for what he did, but I guess that's the US justice system for you.
This school shooter flipped off the parents of the kids he killed in court. On the morning of February 27, 2012, Thomas M. Lane, a 17-year-old juvenile and former student of Chardon, he then shot 6 students at Chardon High School in Ohio, resulting in the deaths of 3 of them. And the video I'm about to show you shows Thomas Lane in court, wearing a shirt that says killer, and then he flips off the victim's parents, and then goes on to say extremely disturbing things to them. Here's the video, and it's absolutely sickening.
To my left is Nicholas Burling, Judge and County Assistant Prosecutor, Mark Bartolotta, Judge and County Assistant Prosecutor, and from the Lake County Prosecutor's Office, Karen Colwell.
Thank you, and you can make it from where you sit. But you can make it seated where you are, if you would. Take your time.
Saying pull the trigger to kill your son, now it masturbates to memory of you.
All right. That's all your client has to say, Mr. Friedman?
Yes, Your Honor.
Nick is a very kind and loving. Why would you want to hurt him? You don't know kind. You're evil. I will have to eventually forgive you. Otherwise, you will haunt me. You will never, ever be in my thoughts after this. Never. My family will move on, not you.
Have you ever thought about maybe becoming a star? Have you ever thought about that? I mean, what if you and I decided to make, if ever you and I got married and we decided to make our own videos, and we added them to different sites.
So this is Corbin Pinnell, aka Jupiter. So when I first saw videos about this guy, I thought the whole thing was a big meme. But then allegations of grooming, of CP possession, and all of that started to surface, and the story took a dark turn. So Corbin, or Jupiter as he likes to be called, is a guy who just makes videos on TikTok and YouTube. But he has been caught many times talking to minors on video calls, asking them for explicit content. I mean, there have also been screenshots leaked of him asking for these images, him being a total creep, admitting to wanting to be with a minor. This guy has been caught trying to do something sketchy with an underage person so many times that I couldn't even show you all the examples if I had a full 10-minute long video. But he's not just allegedly a pedophile. I mean, check this video out. So yeah, it's kind of hard to find the truth in this situation, but a search warrant was allegedly executed on his house dealing with child internet crimes, if you know what I'm talking about. That was a few months ago. I don't know if anything ever came from that, but I mean, there are just so many videos that you can find of this guy where he's literally admitting to sending explicit photographs to, in one of the videos I saw, a child who was 13 years old. He admits to it. He just says it's a transgression of his. I would definitely go check out the creator Linda Binda here on the app. They've done a very good job of covering this whole story, interviewing him multiple times. But yeah, I mean, this is a predator lurking in literal plain sight, admitting to what they've done in the past. So I hope something is done about this situation soon, because it is disturbing.
What? Look in there, mate. Look in there. What? Look in there.
This is Brianna Jai. She was found in a park with multiple stab wounds on Saturday. So that was back in February, and I just wanted to do a quick update as this case has now gone to trial. Some of the details coming out of court are absolutely shocking. Just a quick recap. This was 16-year-old Brianna Jai. She was found stabbed to death back in February in broad daylight on a Saturday afternoon. She was found laying on the path in a park in Warrington by 2 dog walkers, and she'd been stabbed a total of 28 times. 2 teenagers were arrested on suspicion of murder, and it's now come to light that they actually planned Brianna's murder weeks, possibly even months in advance. These 2 15-year-olds had a hit list of 5 people that they wanted to murder, one being Brianna. They'd exchanged messages talking about killing her, and one of them had said, "I want to find out if it screams like a girl or a man." Now, Brianna was a transgender teenager, and due to the evidence, it's now thought that this was a targeted attack because of this, which just goes to show how sick these 2 people actually are. They'd discussed killing 4 other people and also their desire to watch torture videos on the dark web. A note was shown in court that was written by one of the suspects, and it read, "Saturday, 11th of February 2023. Victim Brianna Jai. Plan. Meet Y at Wooden Posts 1 p.m. Walk down to Library bus stop. Wait until Brianna gets off the bus. The 3 of us walk to Linear Park. Go to the Piper Tunnel area. I say code word to Y. He stabs her in the back as I stab her in the stomach. Y drags the body into the area. We cover up the area with logs." Both suspects are apparently trying to blame each other, and neither have taken any responsibility for Brianna's death. Their identities are being kept private due to their age, but there have been plenty of other cases similar to this one where the reporting ban has been lifted after the trial has finished and they've been convicted. I'll keep an eye on the trial, and I'll do a follow-up video once they've been sentenced.
The death of Kate Spade is an incredibly sad story. And at the end of this TikTok, you'll understand why people were enraged when Ulta sent them this email after her death. Catherine Noel Valentine Brosnahan Spade, aka Kate Spade, was born in 1962 in Missouri. Originally, she graduated from college with a journalism degree, and she expected to go into TV broadcast journalism. But eventually, Kate entered the fashion industry, and from that point on, she knew what her life's calling was. In her time spent as a fashion editor, Kate noticed that there was a lack of affordable and stylish handbags for sale. So, in January of 1993, she and her spouse, Andy, founded Kate Spade New York. Quickly, Kate Spade's handbag designs took the world by storm, and before long, Kate Spade was one of the most recognizable brands on the planet. And Kate went from being a broke college kid to one of the richest women on earth. But even though Kate Spade was a fashion designer known worldwide for her fashion sense, and people thought she was a well-put-together woman, she was suffering deep inside. After her death, it was revealed that Kate had been struggling with depression and anxiety for many years, stemming from the fact that she got rich and famous at a very young age. And this depression and anxiety led to Kate Spade's death on June 5th, 2018. On that day, a housekeeper entered Kate Spade's apartment in Manhattan, and she found that she had hanged herself with a red scarf. Kate's death and the way that she took her own life was completely unexpected and was a shock to the world and even her own family members. They knew that she had been battling demons forever, but they had no idea that she had a plan to take her own life. And sadly, it was reported that Kate left a note before she took her own life, which was addressed to her daughter. Now, obviously, this was shocking worldwide news, but after Kate's death, what did Ulta decide to do? Well, in spring of 2022, millions of people who subscribed to get updates from Ulta received this email, which read, "Come hang with Kate Spade." And when they opened up the email, Ulta doubled down on this wording and once again wrote, "Come hang with Kate Spade, the New York City it girl is back." Obviously, this choice of wording was extremely poor considering the manner in which Kate took her own life. And people across the world were absolutely shocked and disgusted that Ulta didn't think this through before sending this email out. Now, Ulta did eventually apologize for this and cited it as some sort of a human error. But yeah, it's just another tragic footnote in the tragic story of how Kate Spade died.
Groomed by a man more than 3 times her age, Kellyanne Bates was only 14 when she met the man that would end her life in what still remains one of the most horrific murders in the UK. Quick trigger warning, some of the details in the video are quite graphic and hard to listen to. James Patterson Smith was an extremely violent man. On the outside, he looked perfectly normal and was actually described by friends as well-groomed and house-proud. He'd been in a few relationships before meeting Kelly, but they'd all ended due to his violent temper. He'd even tried to drown 2 of his previous girlfriends. And at the age of 46, he met 14-year-old Kelly while she was babysitting for some of his friends. Their relationship was kept a secret by Kelly and James for 2 years, but at the age of 16, when she left school, she moved in with him. When Kelly's parents finally met James, they were shocked by his age, and Kelly's mum did everything she could to try and persuade Kelly to leave the relationship. As the months went on, Kelly became more and more withdrawn, and eventually all contact between her and her family stopped. On April 16, 1996, the police received a call from James saying that he'd accidentally drowned his girlfriend in the bath. When they arrived at the house, they found blood throughout the rooms and Kelly's naked body was in the bedroom. It became quite clear that this was not an accidental death. Kelly had drowned in the bath, but only after enduring up to a month of torture at the hands of James. Kelly had over 150 injuries in total. She'd been tied up with a ligature around her neck, she had burns to her legs, a fractured arm, multiple stab wounds from knives, scissors and forks. Her hands were crushed, she had stab wounds inside her mouth, she'd been partially scalped, and she had 2 empty eye sockets. Kelly had endured all of these injuries in the weeks leading up to her death, before finally being dragged to the bathroom and drowned. James was quickly arrested but denied murder, saying that Kelly had inflicted all these injuries on herself to make him look bad. He then changed his story and said that it was him, but that Kelly had taunted him and dared him to do it. It only took the jury 1 hour to find him guilty, and he was sentenced to life in prison with a minimum of 20 years. In January 2023, he actually became eligible for parole, but it was denied and he remains behind bars.
When this teenager vanished, her aunt was horrified to find the word help written in the woods. Danielle Locklear was just 15 years old. She was an intelligent girl who lived in North Carolina with her grandparents. She'd been living there since June 2013, and during that time she got a boyfriend. The boy in question was 17-year-old Jamichael Malloy. Danielle seemed to be initially really happy with him, and the pair had met through the local church. Jamichael seemed like a really nice guy and her family approved. Things seemed really perfect for a while until the relationship became rocky. They started breaking up and getting back together quite frequently. It was in March 2014 when things would turn really dark. Danielle seemed more down than usual, and it was a far cry from how happy she'd been the previous summer. Her family were very worried when she left home on the evening of March the 11th and failed to come back. She had told her step-granddad that she needed to drop something off at her friend's house. This wasn't too far away. She had told them which friend it was, and they knew it was just round the corner, so they didn't expect her to be out long. When she was still not home the next morning, they called police. Initially, investigators started wondering whether she had left of her own accord or maybe had been taken. They discovered that Danielle had been to a local hangout area the day she went missing, and this was a creek in Hope Mills. Now, Danielle's aunt heard rumours about the creek while Danielle was missing and went to investigate. Chillingly, she saw the word help written into the dirt on the trail. Danielle's aunt didn't know whether this was serious and had been left as some sort of clue, or whether it was just kids playing around. Then there was another disturbing find. It was one of Danielle's socks. The sock looked like it had kind of been rolled off of a foot. However, what we do know is that Danielle did make it home that day after hanging out at the creek. Her family had seen her that evening, and it wasn't until 9:45 p.m. when she said she was going for that quick trip to her friend's house. Police did confirm with the friend, though, that she never made it there. So this is obviously really confusing at this point, but stay with it because it will make sense in the end. Police decided to question the boyfriend, who claimed that he'd not seen Danielle for a few days, but he said that they'd broken up and she was struggling mentally. He said she was refusing to accept the fact that he had broken up with her, so he'd blocked her. Jermichael even had an alibi for that night. He said he was with his friend Dominic, and Dominic backed up the story. When police searched his phone, though, they found something shocking. Texts between him and Danielle were talking about Danielle being pregnant. Jermichael's phone also had text messages back and forth with other girls the night that Danielle went missing. Police figured he couldn't be involved. He had an alibi that night with Dominic, and he was also just texting other girls randomly that night. It was an agonizing few weeks until April the 2nd when there was finally some news, but unfortunately it wasn't good. An off-duty police officer spotted something off a bridge near the South River. Tragically, it was Danielle's body. Shockingly, she had large blocks tied around her waist and a sock in her mouth. This was clearly a homicide. The autopsy confirmed that Danielle was not pregnant at the time and had died from asphyxiation. Danielle had interestingly been found less than a mile from Jermichael's home, so he was made prime suspect. In his house, they also found blocks and rope that matched the ones that were found on Danielle's body. They also found Danielle's phone nearby, which contained a terrifying voicemail from Jermichael. He stated, "If you come around me, I will kill you." On April the 9th, he confessed. It transpired that on the evening that Danielle had vanished, Jermichael and Dominic drove with Danielle to that creek. So we now know that she'd been there twice. Once the day that she'd gone missing, and then in the evening she had also gone with Jermichael and Dominic. The couple had got into an argument about the apparent pregnancy, and it had turned physical. Jermichael strangled her, and Dominic helped him drag her dead body to the car. They tied blocks to her and dumped her in the river. Both males were arrested and charged, Jermichael with second-degree murder and Dominic with accessory after the fact. Dominic got 6 to 8 years in prison and Jermichael got 25 to 31 years. This woman screamed, "I don't want to die," as she was dragged to her death in a horrifying theme park incident. Kelty Byrne was a Canadian student animal trainer and competitive swimmer. She was working at Sealand of the Pacific to earn extra money, and this involved being trained to work with orcas, otherwise known as killer whales. In controversial theme parks such as Sealand of the Pacific and SeaWorld, huge animals are either bred in captivity or traumatically captured and ripped apart from their families and natural habitats for humans' entertainment. On February the 20th, 1991, Kelty was working a shift and 3 whales were in one of the pools, including the infamous Tilikum. In a horrific turn of events, Kelty accidentally slipped and fell into the whale pool and attempted to grab onto the edge and save herself. However, before she could do so, she was grabbed by one of the whales that dragged her into the pool. The 3 whales then began throwing Kelty around, with many speculating that they may have simply thought this was a game. Others theorised that the whales were so traumatised and angered by their lives in tiny little pools that they took it out on Kelty. She was dragged under the water and then back up, screaming, "I don't want to die." After this horrific ordeal, she eventually drowned. It's reported that she was absolutely covered in bruises, was completely battered, and also covered in teeth marks. If I didn't know this was a true crime case, I would think it was a disturbing horror film. On the morning of the 7th of October 2022, a barefoot woman was running around Excelsior Springs, Missouri, bashing on people's doors. Witnesses describe her looking like she came straight from a horror film, and she was calling for help. She'd been beaten, held captive, and SA'd for weeks. The woman was a shocking sight. She was covered in injuries and was wearing a bin bag. Disturbingly, she was gasping for breath as she had a very tight metal collar locked round her neck. It was a nurse who opened the door to her and let her come in. The nurse started to call police, and at this point the woman panicked. She warned her that the captor would kill her and claimed that he had killed her 2 friends. When police got there, the woman explained that a man called Timothy had captured her the month prior. He'd been holding her hostage this whole time. She said he'd been keeping her locked in the basement and had been SAing her. Disturbingly, she told police that he actually had a young son who lived at the house with him. When Timothy had taken his young son to school the one day, she used it as her opportunity to escape. Police made their way to the home of 39-year-old Timothy Hazlitt Jr. and found the property did in fact have a basement like the woman described. Timothy was arrested and is facing 9 charges including first-degree kidnapping. He's being held on a $3 million bond and faces 5 life sentences. Before his arrest, police were actually called to his address 3 times. Twice they were asked to do welfare checks, and this was from an employer and also family members. Police have searched his home with cadaver dogs and they haven't yet released what they know.